A couple of days ago, I asked my fans a question on my Facebook fan page. Do they have a friend or friends who they feel is simply impossible to help, and if so, what are their issues? I brought this question up for a few reasons, mostly though all of them are personal. For starters, I had to deal with this issue a lot in that a lot of my friends weren't up to snuff and I kept stressing myself about it. Don't worry though, this isn't to praise myself or anything. This is to establish a realization about how bad that behavior of mine was. I know it can be frustrating to have friends who aren't the best or don't actively try to get better, but there are two ways to look at this. Even if you really want your friend to improve so you can have better games and be less stressed out about winning, ask yourself if you know, or directly ask them about it, if winning is actually important to them. For your friends, fun may be goofing around and hardly trying while not caring about winning or losing. For them, it can be fun to actively defy the meta despite how much of a detriment it can be, or to play something really trollish. If they prefer it that way and it upsets you, then it's you who has the problem. This is the realization I had some years back, and it has saved me a lot of stress. I would get so strung up about my friends feeding or playing poorly that it would tilt me. I wanted them to get better so I could have more fun. However, I was not realizing how selfish that was, and instead they wanted me to liven the hell up. It is my fault if I knowingly play with a group that takes things lightly and we get destroyed. When I finally made that simple realization that took me a long time to make, I started actually enjoying myself in those groups. I know what I may get myself into with certain groups, so I tailor my expectations as such. The main takeaway from that is that if your friends do not want to improve or fix their issues, is that you shouldn't bother trying to help them. If you play with your weak friends and constantly get bothered by them, then it's clearly your fault. However, this is not what this video is about. Some fans seem to have those friends who talk a really big game but just suck. The other day I had a teammate who flat out refused to play any more games with me because I told him to build armor against a ribbon. I kid you fucking not, that was the only thing I said. The person even used the word "I hate him" to describe me. There are people like this who get so stressed out about playing, you wonder if they actually enjoy playing the video game at all. My fans gave me examples of such friends, so I will try to come up with solutions to those problems in this video. Not all of these people are anger lords, but can simply be nice and cool people who get super strung up on some ideal or notion that seemingly holds them back. Now, don't worry, there are some edgelords here you may enjoy learning about, but I just want to make it clear that some of the problems my fans presented are pertaining to friends who simply have a problem getting better. The first one I want to start off with is probably an obvious joke response to the video, but to be perfectly fair, it's not a totally silly thing to talk about. What if you are the friend who sucks and holds everyone back? The idea that you are a detriment to your friends is a painful one, as you know they could be doing better. However, even if it feels shitty, it doesn't need to consume you. Do your friends not mind and in fact just want to enjoy your company? If that's the case, then you should relax a little bit. Yeah, it sucks to be a feeder, but if your main motivation is to hang out with your friends, and theirs is to hang out with you, then make the game about the group rather than the game itself. With that in mind, if you really want to get better and have exhausted every avenue in order to try to get better, then it's time to strongly tailor your expectations and reflect on the first thing I said. Some of us are doomed to suck at some stuff. I am absolute trash at board games, but I still do it to hang out with friends and family. I tilt easily and overcommit in those games. In those cases, as harsh as it may be to say, your only options are to quit the game or accept it and instead enjoy it for other reasons. Again, it's not to be mean, but to suggest that your time may be better spent just having fun with friends rather than stressing out over something that is so far unattainable. Now this one is kind of adorable, although kind of frustrating video game wise. I have had experience with players like this, but it's usually newer players who grow out of it quickly. These are the players who feel the strange need to always fight by their teammate's side, a sort of all-for-one ideal. It mostly just ends up with a group of people constantly feeding. The only real advice I can give is to grab your friend and remind them that this is a video game and not real life. In real life, rushing to the aid of a homie will often be seen as noble, but in video games, especially when the result would clearly be negative, it is stupid. Hell, the person that you're trying to support may also just get pissed that someone else went to die with them. I have a feeling this may have also been built up by the fear created in some games where a teammate badgers everyone else about, "Why did no one go in?" or "Where is my team?" And your friend and others like this might have just built up this subconscious need to avoid it at all costs. Still though, my point stands. You have to remind your friend that this is just a video game and nobility, honor, and all that stuff doesn't really exist, nor does anyone really care about it. They may die alone, but they will respawn in a few seconds. I'm not even going to bash your friend too hard for this one. Raging over losing CS is just a person self-tilting for something they figure they should have down at this point. I've seen LCS players on stream flip the fuck out over losing CS and failing their last hits, which in turn makes them lose more CS and so on and so forth. Hell, my best friend also rages uncontrollably over losing CS and full on admits it can cause him to want to rage quit. The only advice I can give on this is to tell them that if they don't relax, they'll probably lose even more CS. If that doesn't work, then sort of just laugh it off because it's sometimes just funny to listen to them. Now, this is one of the more frustrating ones, the friend who bitches and blames overpowered champions for their own failures. They ruin the atmosphere as a result and tilt for the next several games. Worse yet, they will make every excuse to justify their crazy ideas. Everyone has these moments and some of us handle it better. However, there are some people who seemingly let it consume them. It becomes a defensive mechanism for them because their emotions are running rampant while tilting. You can't seemingly tell them anything or argue with them when they're like this. Unfortunately, it is usually due to cognitive dissonance. Your friend simply refuses to acknowledge they sucked it up and therefore makes excuses to defend themselves. It is basically purely ego. This is of course obvious without the fancy name, and the only fix is to make them realize it and come to terms with it. It sounds simple, but it's really hard to achieve with some people. The only way I can see this being fixed is if your friend finally just admits to themselves, or you take the gamble and tell them straight up that they're not as good as they think they are, and point out why they are causing their own problems. This of course can cause problems with a friendship, so I wouldn't recommend it unless you feel this is important for you two to resolve. It may jumpstart their realization of how their negative behavior affects everyone. This one is rather sad, and I've played with a few people like this. I don't say this in order to start a fight or anything, but oftentimes this has happened when girls became involved in the group and some guys whip themselves in order to appease them. It is true though that you oftentimes can't help them until they get burned. If you're their buddy, then that might be the only thing you can do. I'm going to assume that this fan post was about a friend who gets smack talked by everyone and they just take it, who gets forced into roles despite wanting to play something else, and so on, basically being the bitch boy. The only thing you can possibly help them with is by discussing things and behaviors they truly dislike and to strongly encourage them to remember the things you both discussed and maintain them. What I mean by that is that if you and your friend make this list of expectations, then your friend now runs a risk of disappointing you and themselves because they know what they should be striving for. I believe this can work because it did for me. This may not be league related, but when I was in high school, I was totally taken advantage of by other people, but mostly because I let myself. I kept getting annoyed with it, so I made a list of things that I did that bothered me, and letting others copy my work was on it. From then on, whenever I let someone copy from me, I was filled with disappointment because I know I had just told myself not to be doing this. Eventually, I was able to start telling people no because I was done disappointing myself. This is everyone's favorite friend, the "it's not my fault" guy. They're the types to look for a scapegoat each game no matter how flimsy their argument is. They're the ones to blame top lane for losing the game despite not ever actually seeing what was going on in top lane. They're the ones who would bitch at opponents for doing the same stuff they're doing. I'm not denying that there can be games where you were the only thing good in it, but just as that can happen, you could be in a game where you are not part of anything good in it at all. As they say, your friend is the only constant variable in each game, and if he's repeatedly doing horribly, then he's at least part of the issue. You can tell your friend this, but it may not actually matter since these people tend to be headstrong. This is another one of those situations in which the person has to realize that their own stubborn behavior isn't helping them. The only two things I can see you possibly doing is upstaging your friend by having a higher rank, or upstaging them by playing their favorite champions and performing consistently better. Both are mean, of course, but if you're at your wit's end, then perhaps it's time. And finally, yes, you can. Anyhow, there were definitely more fan comments for the post I made, but many of them are either encompassed within the ones I already covered, or had too much personal information that I chose not to host them for that very reason. I wanted to do something different and involve the fans quite a bit in the video making process, and then perhaps have a reference video if people ask a question that can be taken care of with what was discussed. Hopefully you enjoyed this break from the usual, because I certainly did, and for the most part, I greatly enjoy the conversations I have with fans on the Facebook group page. If this video is well received, I will consider making more like this in the future. Videos like this are made possible by my sponsors, Crunchyroll and Loot Crate. Loot Crate's upcoming April crate contains Harry Potter, Vikings, Labyrinth of the David Bowie kind, and Uncharted stuff. If you're interested in any of those themes and would like to check out the offer, click the link in the description below. Using either service greatly supports my channel and I'll appreciate it tremendously.